Well, this happened recently, so I guess it's time for the Zero Made Easy video. Bear with me as I'm mostly going into Zero pretty new to all their inner workings, but I'm gonna try my best to explain everything as I'm actually really enjoying this class. Their presentation always interested me, just from how they could chain binds and bosses, along with their whole weapon system and sharing cosmetics, kinda. They're also unique in a number of different ways from any other class in this game. The biggest first one to mention is the fact they start off at level 100, are a very story-driven class up to 200, and are locked out of most of the game until they reach 200 and beat their story quest. Same with their Legion block, which has its own rank levels up to 200, these to be exact. Another unique factor to them is they don't have a 1st through 4th job. They just have a shared tab, which is essentially their equivalent to a beginner tab, a Transcendent Skills tab, which is their hyper skills, kinda, a 5th job tab once you get to 200, and a 0 tab, which houses all their main attacks they use. They get more of these as they progress the story and level up. Let's go back to the shared tab for a moment. Here, they have dual combat, which moves them a little bit forward every time they tag out with their attacks and swap between Alpha and Beta. This is Alpha, the boy with the longer sword, and this is Beta, the girl with the big sword. You can right click to toggle this so they stay in place when you swap between them. Divine Aura is a big passive you toggle that counts for both you and your party members, and gives attack speed, attack, and some defensive stats. Burst Jump is a standard flash jump, and Burst Step is a teleport that animation cancels most of Zero's skills. Most useful for their attacks that lock them in a longer animation for a few seconds, but it can be used on just about everything else too, and doing so gives you a bit more control for both grinding and bossing. Right click it to remove the double tap portion of it if that annoys you. Lastly, they also get a nice passive that levels up throughout the storyline, and the good old Maple Warrior and Heroes will. Moving on to their Zero tab, starting with Alpha. Moonstrike, Piercing Thrust, and Shadow Strike are all part of the same combo string and are very useful in bossing. Moon pulls enemies in, Piercing knocks them back, and Shadow teleports forward to the nearest enemy if you hold left or right. As I mentioned earlier, Zero has this system called Tag and Assist. I mention this because Beta's combo string here assists these skills. Rising Slash knocks enemies up, and Air Raid smacks them mid-air. Air Ride is an upgraded air raid that adds a shockwave on the ground that stuns enemies. I'll be presenting all of Zero's skills with their combo string alongside their Tag and Assist counterpart for the rest of this video. Flash Assault and Blade Ring rushes Alpha forward and spins at the location, and Advanced Blade Ring sends shockwaves outward on either side for extra range and damage. Beta's Flash Cut and Throwing Weapon hits a big swing forward and then another big swing. Advanced Throwing Weapon launches a big spinning sword that slowly flies forward, does some more damage, and adds some knockback. Alpha's Rolling Cross and Rolling Assault are a nice mobility combo, sending you up and forward, and then spinning you forward. Grand Rolling Cross and Advanced Rolling Assault adds more beams flying out, which double or quadruple for rolling, depending on distance. Beta's Spin Driver pulls enemies in, and Wheelwind turns you into a cyclone for a few seconds. Advanced Wheelwind upgrades it to pull in enemies and last a bit longer. This can be cancelled at any time by pressing any other attack, even teleport. Alpha's Wind Cutter, Wind Striker, and Stormbreak attack in front of you, and if each hit an enemy, they send out a vortex forward that does damage to everything in their path. Advanced Stormbreak adds in a vortex with a shock field that does a ton more normal enemy damage. Beta's Giga Crash, Falling Star, and Groundbreaker have massive hitboxes above and in front of you. Advanced Groundbreaker leaves a shock field on the ground that lasts for 5 seconds, and it does damage over time to all enemies caught within it. These last two sets of skills are going to be your best mobbing combo for a while, as both work really well into each other, and both have extra effects that just constantly obliterate enemies. More so Alpha's Tornadoes on both sides. Lastly, they also get a bunch of various passives. For Alpha, he gets way more attack speed, crit damage, IED, Time Force Recovery, their version of mana, and a bleed effect chance on all enemies that heals you. Beta gets more damage, boss damage, flat attack, defensive everything, a chance to drop the enemy's defense that stacks up to 5 times, a massive shield that technically counts as an iframe apparently the moment it's created, and Critical Bind, which gives you a chance with every attack to bind bosses. When they're bound, they take more damage from Alpha's attacks for 4 seconds. What's cool about this skill is its bind is entirely separate from the global bind timer. It has its own separate timer of 35 seconds and chains into all of Zero's other binds, which I'll get into soon. For their Transcendent Skills, they start off with Double Time, which reduces all their main attack cooldowns every time you attack. So not 5th Job or Transcendent Skills. It also increases their damage a little bit, up to 5 stacks for a max of 5% extra damage each. Time Distortion is an AoE that debuffs enemies and increases their damage taken, and gives party members attack speed and removes their debuffs. Time Holding resets all of your cooldowns, as well as gives you unlimited time force, and makes you invincible for 15 seconds. At 200, it also increases your damage by 10% for 90 seconds. 3-minute cooldown, but this skill is really important and really useful. Rewind is a passive revive that triggers once you lose all your health, giving you an iframe for 2 seconds when it triggers, and it has a 30-minute cooldown. Shadow Rain is a bind that lasts 4 seconds and does big damage, with an animation that also lasts about the entire bind duration. To get around this, either tag in after a combo string, or more commonly just use burst step upwards, and you can move around freely again. Though you can't tag too easily while it's happening, unless it's at the end of a combo string. If you use Time Holding, you can use it right after again, and it'll bind again, since it doesn't even have a bind timer. This skill is beyond useful in boss parties. Lastly, Focus Time is just their equivalent of Echo of Hero, 4% extra attack and magic attack to everyone nearby for 40 minutes, 2-hour cooldown, and it can be reset with Time Holding. For 5th Job, they, finally, get a bind that shares the global bind timer cooldown of 90 seconds, Chrono Break. It binds everything on screen and gives you a buff that reduces your skill cooldowns by a ton and increases your attack speed and final damage. At the end of the skill, or if you hit the button again, it does a big burst of damage to everything with the hourglass icon on them, 2-minute cooldown. Twin Blades of Time is a big attack that also counts as an iframe for the whole duration, which is about 4 or so seconds. It hits a ton of lines, and it has a bunch of various hitboxes, so I'll quickly bring up the Zero guide document. It goes way more into detail about literally every hitbox and damage area and amount of lines of each part of this skill, as well as the optimal place to stand to get all the hits off on a single enemy. They say it's about 2.5 to 3 character spaces away from where you're standing to hit 111 times. You can also burst step up to move around during its duration. 2-minute cooldown. Shadow Flash have separate AoE fields for both Alpha and Beta, each with their own separate cooldowns. You press it once to place down the initial AoE field that lasts 40 seconds, and click it again to teleport back to it to do a big attack in its area. 40-second cooldown for each too, so you can technically have this up all the time for both. Ego Weapon is a passive for both Alpha and Beta, again with their own cooldowns, 15 seconds each, that send out 9 spinning blades for Alpha and 3 giant swords around Beta. While we're at 5th Job, I'll also mention Zero's unique class nodes, since they're pretty much 5th Job skills all on their own. Transcendent gives you 3 buffs, 1 for each of Maple's Transcendents. Light makes spears fly out at enemies when you attack, and they stay there as an AoE for a little bit. Life blocks a few debuffs, and Time gives you after images with your attacks, 2-minute cooldown. And lastly, Transcendent Rin's Prayer resets your cooldowns. That's right, Zero gets another cooldown reset. It also gives additional attacks when you get double time stacks, and it has 2 charges that charge every 4 minutes each. Even with all these systems, Zero isn't all that complicated. Here's how you make them way easier. Burst stepping upwards makes everything so much more comfortable, as I mentioned a few times. You can burst step out of longer animations, shorter animations to smooth things out, and also chain with Flash Assault to move diagonally if you hold step upwards and use both at the same time. For both grinding and bossing, you'll want to be swapping between Alpha and Beta constantly whenever you can, because every time you do, you get that sweet assist damage every time you swap. That's those white and red numbers you see. Zero has insane boss bind potential. There's probably a ton of other combinations, but the main one I'll mention is once Beta's critical bind triggers, use Shadow Rain, burst step up, use Time Holding, and Shadow Rain and burst step up again. 12-second bind right there. If you have Rin's Prayer in a node slot, Pop that and use Shadow Rain again. Then, use Chrono Break for another 10 seconds. That right there is a potential of 26 seconds a boss can be bound for. If you're in parties too, you will be loved and adored for holding the boss down for that long. Critical Bind can also just apply and stack onto the existing bind as a heads up, so if you wanted to bind at a specific time and not wait for chance, just Shadow Rain spam and whack away with Beta until the crit bind shows up and applies. Zero's weapon is one of the most unique aspects about them. First off, it gets infinite backups, meaning you can keep hacking away trying for 22 stars as much as you like, with no downsides other than losing mesos from star forcing. Although if it is type 8 or higher and you boom it, you'll need to reacquire whatever Absolab or Arcane Essence and Lucky Scrolls you threw on it. Everything else stays exactly as it was though. Ideally, you'd want to push it to 22 around types 5 to 7 before you can start losing stuff thrown onto it, which is what I waited to do before I ended up surprisingly really loving the class mechanically. Second, it transfers up everything in between upgrades. Potential, Boss Soul, Flame, and Star Force. Nothing degrades. So once you finish your weapon and get it to 21 or 22, you're done. It's 22 all the way up to Arcane and Genesis weapons. Third, since they don't have a natural secondary other than the swords when Alpha and Beta swap places, that means their potentials apply twice. Last note on the weapon, it currently doesn't get boss flames, which is the biggest downside. This means they don't get tier 6 or 7 flames with massive attack and stats. It's a small thing, but something to mention. For training throughout most maps, all you gotta do is find a big horizontal map with about 2 or 3 platforms relatively close to each other, use Beta's Giga Crash combo on the top platform and let the Shock Field AoE cover the platform a little bit, then teleport down and tag in Alpha with his Wind Cutter combo. Teleport back up, swap to Beta with the Giga Crash combo again, rinse and repeat. Tornadoes clear pretty much the entire map, and the damage from both clears the enemies within those hitboxes fairly well too. Some maps they don't even need to teleport, and it's just small enough for both to hit everything, like in Reverse City's Research Train 1. For bossing, it's a little more involved and varies depending on if you have a cooldown hat, how much attack speed you have, and if they're patched out or not, or if they've been nerfed, etc. To make understanding some of their boss combos a bit easier, I'll also mention that Alpha and Beta's combo strings all have their own shorthands. For Alpha, Moonstrike's entire combo is A1, Flash Assault's combo is A2, Rolling Crosses is A3, and Wind Strikers is A4. For Beta, Rising Slash's combo is B1, Flash Cuts is B2, Spin Drivers is B3, and Giga Crashes is B4. With that out of the way, currently these are the main non-cooldown hat combos. And these are the combos that require a -2 second cooldown hat. These are all potentially subject to change in the future, so for now I'll say follow this part loosely, and just know to use Alpha's A1 combo a few times, then swap to Beta and string your attacks in any way that feels best. Or just check the Zero Discord or the big Google Doc like I am for this. Inner ability is a bit different. For the first line, you have a choice between attack speed being the overall best choice, boss damage, or cooldown skip. Cooldown skip can reset things like Shadow Rain and AB Link, but it's also very chance based, which might not appeal to everyone. It is pretty fun when it does work as intended though. For second and third lines, try to get any mix of these, like any other class. Drop in Meso if you plan on farming or aiming for boss drops too. For Trinodes, you'll eventually want everything, but really choose what's best suited for you. Since you'll be wanting all the tries eventually anyways, I'd recommend just avoiding perfect tries and going for slant perfects if you don't get perfect Trinodes and plan on playing this class for a long time. Otherwise, for grinding, you'll want to prioritize Wind Cutter, Striker, and Stormbreak. For bossing, literally everything else. But I guess Moonstrike and Piercing Thrust more specifically, since you'll be using those skills, and Beta's counterpart skills too, just about all the time. In short, max out everything, prioritize what you like using best. Zero's equipment setups are a bit odd. They use mostly the same things as any other class, except for hat and weapon. For hat, they'll want to aim for any of the lucky variant hats from CRA. The names of these are just Chaos, followed by whatever boss said hat was from, but it also says at the bottom of the hat that it counts as a lucky item, meaning it applies to any other set of your choosing. Reg server will want specifically Chaos Vellum's helm, but Reboot can get away with using any of the CRA boss's Chaos variant hats. This is because Reg server still uses scrolls, and Chaos Vellum's helm has 13 total slots when hammered, over the other hats 12. Anyways, it counts towards the Rudibus set, in either your Absolab set or Arcane set, depending on which one you have equipped or are working towards. You get the effects of a 4-set Rudibus, as well as the effects of 5-set Absolab or Arcane. It's a massive increase counting towards multiple sets. For weapons, Lucky Scrolls exist, which add Zero's weapon to whatever set you throw said scroll of onto. In this case, again, you'll want the Rudibus Lucky Scroll. Mixed with the Absolab or Arcane Essence, it too will count towards both the Rudibus set, as well as the Absolab or Arcane sets. Apparently having an Arcane Umbra hat can eventually give overall more damage than the Lucky Helmet setup, but Genesis weapon overtakes Lucky Helmet entirely. For Link skills, it's just about the same as any other class, having one specifically for grinding, looking something like this, prioritizing Evan, Mercedes, and Aran links, and another for bossing looking something like this. For burst/BA, keep in mind to use whatever boss combo of your choice best suits you, depending on attack speed and if you have a -2 second cooldown hat or not, etc. Use these attacks in between the parts of this burst, where you're just waiting for the next big chain string. Start setting up by placing down both Shadow Flashes and Time Distortion, and pop AB Link. The BA starts here with Chrono Break. Pop Will Skill if you have that in a node slot, both Shadow Flashes again, and Shadow Rain. Use Transcendent Rinse Prayer for the reset and extra damage. Use AB Link again, and also Shadow Rain and set up and pop both Shadow Flashes. Use Time Holding, Shadow Rain, AB Link, Twin Blades of Time, and both Shadow Flashes again. One more reset. Pop Time Distortion if that ever went away, your second Rinse Prayer, and another Shadow Rain and AB Link. Okay, let's simplify and untangle this messy looking BA. Set up Time Distortion in both Shadow Flashes before it starts, pop AB Link, then Chrono Break. Then from here on out, pop both Shadow Flashes in Rain, reset it, attack in between, more Flash and Rain, AB, reset, Flash, Rain, AB Link, reset. Yeah, according to the Big Zero Google Doc, it looks like Zero's whole BA is just spam Flash, Rain, AB, and all of the resets. Wow. I'm going to go ahead and guess separate from this document that if you don't have all your binds up, that you instead bind once and hack away with your boss combo of your choice, and I guess save all your binds for a huge bind whenever the party is ready for it, or yourself if you're soloing. I'm still not entirely sure on that honestly, but I tried making as much sense of it as I could. This video was a bit of a spur of the moment idea, mainly just because I got 22 on my weapon during a recent 30% off Star Force Sunny Sunday. Though I haven't fully grasped everything this class is capable of just yet, I still hope I was able to teach whoever watches this video some important information. I've branched out a little bit here, trying to do a big made easy guide for a class I wasn't too familiar with prior to making this video. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this guide helped you in any way, and major thanks and shoutouts to the Zero Discord for documenting this class so insanely thoroughly. Their Zero document, as of the time of making this video, is, no joke, 123 pages long. They go in depth about this class. Better than I ever could, go check it out. I have a fairly good idea for what class guide I want to do next, but if there's any classes in specific you'd like to see in the future, let me know in the comments. That's all.